Straight talk from Israel. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
All right. Well, today we are going to be talking about family values, biblical family values, and the liberal left. That's what the show is going to be concentrating on, but I want to give you a little bit of a news update for what's going on in Corona news here in Israel specifically. I'm going to read you something very briefly from Arutz Sheva, IsraelNationalNews.com, and it says here that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the reimposition of coronavirus restrictions in light of the increase in COVID-19 cases during the weekly cabinet meeting Sunday here in Israel. Quote, the pandemic is raising its head around the world. We have passed the threshold of 10 million infected people and 500,000 dead. This is around the world. I do not know if this is the second wave. I do know that this is a rising wave. Many countries that lifted the restrictions upon a lessening of the disease are now being compelled to reimpose the restrictions in order to block the spread. We have seen in other places that this is not a health or economic issue because a severe blow to health is also a very severe blow to the economy, Netanyahu said. All right, so I just want to say here, folks, this hit to the world economy, which is happening everywhere, not just Israel, around the world, is, I believe, eventually going to fall on the heads of Jews. Look at history. This is not something I'm making up from fiction. I'm looking at history. And now today is no different. Whenever there were pandemics or plagues, there were, of course, hits to the economy of that country. And it eventually came down to always somehow blaming the Jews in some way. When people in a society are down, they want to focus their blame on someone. They're going to look around, and they may see successful Jewish doctors, lawyers, teachers, accountants, and point their fingers at them and take it out on them. We'll be right back.
Always challenging the status quo. Hello, I'm Rod Bryant on Beyond the Matrix here at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. I want to encourage you to listen each week, every Wednesday at the same time, for an amazing show that will challenge you, inform you, and inspire. News, views, and wisdom for the nation here on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Don't forget, Beyond the Matrix every week, Wednesday, here on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com.
All right, so we're talking about family values, biblical family values, and the liberal left. There is today in Israel a lot of news happening. We're going to go into it a little bit later in the show, but first I want to read to you something that was written by Rabbi Hanania Weissman, and I actually read something that a piece that he wrote, I think it was last week on the show, and he wrote something else that I found, and I wanted to share it with you as well. And in fact, he's going to be joining us later on the show to talk about biblical family values. But this one here is talking about what's going on right now in the United States, and it has to do with it because we're seeing a huge push from the liberal left, the democratic socialists that are trying to fundamentally change America and its value system and put in their anarchy and what they want and totally deconstruct America into their vision. And unfortunately, the There are a lot of Jews in America. I think it's the second largest Jewish population in the world is in the United States. The first one, of course, being here in Israel. And we're trying to wake up Jews in the diaspora. Wherever you are, I want you to listen to this article because it is, if it can happen in America, it can definitely happen wherever you are in the world. And it's called Can It Happen in America? By Hanania Weissman. He says, you immediately knew what it is. Can it happen in America? Because deep down, you know we're not that far away, even if you don't want to admit it. 15 years ago, I was teaching social studies to fifth graders. 15 years ago was a completely different era. Donald Trump was an eccentric businessman no one had heard of. Obama and Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez hadn't, he says here, no one had heard of Obama, and AOC hadn't even mixed her first drink yet. No one realized that half the products in their shopping cart were racist. Remember, you have Aunt Jemima, Uncle Ben's rice, all these things, let alone something that should enrage them. There were only two genders. Well, there still are, but no one had to pretend otherwise to keep their job or be considered good. It was a better time. I taught my students that their basic rights in America were not really guaranteed. For example, a two-thirds majority of Congress could vote that Jews are not part of mankind, and Viola, the Bill of Rights would no longer protect them. All men are created equal, only applies to human beings, not to animals or a subspecies like Jews. Just like that, all their rights would be out the window. Now, I just want to insert here, I doubt that's going to happen, but the results of something like that could happen. Let me just continue here with the article. It seems I overestimated what it would take for such a previously unthinkable development to become plausible. Who needs Congress to vote on anything anymore? The toxic formula of the day is strategic social media campaigns, a takeover of the educational system, a compliant media relentlessly pushing propaganda, and a coordinated effort of politicians, celebrities, and activists to manipulate blindly religious followers. Changing the law is merely an afterthought. Change happens forcefully on the ground and is enshrined in law at a later time. Diaspora Jews seem oblivious to the danger they are in. They believe the old institutions will protect them, ignoring the fact that these institutions are no longer respected. The Constitution is a piece of paper in a museum. The law is only as powerful as the will of the people to respect it, the ability of the police and justice system to enforce it, and the determination of leaders to uphold it. I just want to insert here, sadly, that we're not seeing this now. All three of the above are null and void in America. The revolutionaries have successfully abolished any semblance of respect for the law, tradition, or civility. The police are under attack from all sides and have been effectively neutered. The leaders on one side support the revolution, and the other side has failed to muster a meaningful response. When, not if, the riots come to Jewish neighborhoods, there is nothing to stop them. There are no longer any boundaries that are inviolable, nor any conceivable way that things will just settle down. The revolutionaries are on a roll. There is nothing stopping them, and they have no intention of stopping. Consider the following scenario. A police officer in Atlanta is facing the death penalty for killing someone who attacked him, stole his weapon, and used it against him. This, in and of itself, is absurd. There are a number of ways this can turn out. A, the officer is acquitted. Pandemonium will ensue. The police have been so demonized and the lower elements of society have been so brainwashed that even the possibility of acquittal is anathema to them. Atlanta will burn. There will be riots all over the country, and this quote-unquote injustice will become the trigger for the next steps of the revolution that are currently in the planning stages. Of course, they will be quote-unquote spontaneous when they actually occur. Or this scenario, B, the officer is convicted of a lesser charge and sent to prison or receives some other punishment. Now that the death penalty is on the table, anything less will enrage the mob that forever seeks pretexts to be enraged. Atlanta will burn, and there will be riots all over the country. Not only that, but in this scenario, police officers all over the country will also protest the conviction of their colleague, who they will say was railroaded to appease the mob. The revolutionaries will run amok, and the police will do nothing. This has already happened, and such a scenario may mark the official end of law and order in America. Or C, ABC, right? We're next possibility. The officer is convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. The revolutionaries will celebrate their victory, fueling their insatiable appetite for more such victories and more, quote, social changes, unquote, which will include more riots and burnings. Police will turn in their badges en masse, and the streets will be ruled by gangs, vigilantes, and private security, as is the case in third world countries. And that's happening today, my friends. This outcome seems inevitable at this point anyway, but a death sentence will make it a reality almost instantly. And another scenario, D, the officer is sentenced to death and receives a presidential pardon. The pandemonium and riots will be just as bad as if the officer received an acquittal, and the revolutionaries will use this as the fuel for their next steps. Police around the country will still quit over the railroading of their colleague, and the breakdown in law and order will reach the same destination from a slightly different trajectory. There is no scenario in which this turns out well. The revolutionaries stop breaking boundaries, law and order is restored long term, and Humpty Dumpty is put back together again. This is not going to happen. If you are a Jew who feels secure in America right now, I invite you to present your case and argue why people should believe in it. But I caution you, this is not a theoretical Talmudic discussion. This is real life, your life. This brings us back to the original question, can it happen in America? Of course it can. The pillars of American society are being torn down and burned all around you. Those who cherish these pillars are disorganized, confused, and backpedaling. Eventually, they will probably gather themselves and form their own mobs to push back. But either way, it's going to get very ugly. I'm going to stop here because we've come to the end of this segment. I'm going to continue on, and I invite you to call in if you want a rebuttal or if you want to weigh in on the issue. If you have a question, this is a live show. If you're listening on Sunday afternoon here in Israel or Sunday morning U.S. Eastern Time, we are live, and you can call into the show. Our numbers are on the top of our homepage at IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. Don't go anywhere, everybody. We're going to be right back. This is serious.
Shalom, everybody. Making a difference often takes just one moment and one person at a time. I am Orly Benny Davis, your show host on Israel News Talk Radios from Jerusalem with love. You'll be hearing people talking about politics, religion, social issues, and making a better tomorrow. Join me, Orly Benny Davis, for God and Country. From Jerusalem with love.
Wednesdays on Israel News Talk Radio.
Can it happen in America? That's the question that we're asking today. As I read this piece written by Hanania Weissman, he's going to be joining us later in the show, by the way. And he wrote this very interesting piece that I think all of us need to read. And because it could happen. Will it happen? I don't know. But in any case, even if it doesn't happen, it's going to be bad for the Jews. Because whenever there is a plague, whenever there is a pandemic, whenever a country or a culture gets hit in the pocketbook, they want to blame somebody, and they're always blaming the Jews. And I'm not making this up. This is history. It's history. I'm just telling you what happens all the time in history, and today is going to be no different. Let me continue reading from this very, very well-written piece. And he writes here and continues and says, this is the situation right now, today in America. When the revolutionaries come to Jewtown, meaning your town where there are Jews, when they come to Jewtown, USA, to spread some equality and justice, because we all know that they always market things to be something that, how can you argue with equality, right? Everybody wants equality and everybody wants justice, right? So, but it's their equality and their justice, right? Some animals are more equal than other animals. Remember that in Animal Farm? So when they come to your town to spread some, quote, equality and justice, the police are not going to shoot them. Your Gentile neighbors, who may have already kneeled and kissed the feet of some of these people, are going to think about their job and their family. They may not hate you. They might even think you're okay. But they are not going to sacrifice everything for you when the tidal waves come crashing down. Tell me, he writes, why this can't happen. Tell me why this won't happen. Because people are intrinsically good? Because you have good relationships with your neighbors? Because you made some show of solidarity with the revolutionaries? Because this is America and it can't happen here? History is repeating itself one last time. Social unrest, economic hardship, political upheaval, a breakdown in law and order, and hate-filled tribalism have never turned out well for the Jews. Literally every single time this has happened over 2,000 years, the Jews got it wrong, and they paid dearly. Maybe this is the time we finally do a tikkun, or a fixing, and get it right. The time to make a 5-year plan ended 5 years ago. Now is the moment of truth. America is tearing down its history, and you need to learn from yours. You have a place to go where you will be warmly welcomed by your own people, no matter what stripe of Jew you are, where there will always be a place for you, where your neighbors will share your past and your future, where they will sacrifice for you and fight for you because they are your own family. And I just want to vouch for that all of us, whether you're secular or religious or you're right-wing or left-wing, when the Jewish people are threatened here in the land of Israel, everybody, left-wingers, right-wingers, religious, non-religious, we put on our uniforms and we go out and we protect each other. We protect the population here of Israel. And all of these labels melt away, because when it comes down to it, whether you have more liberal leanings or more conservative leanings, we're all Jews and we all protect ourselves. And we protect everybody here in the country. And we guarantee everybody here rights in this country. Even if it's against biblical values. And I'm going to talk about that in the next segment, that on Sunday in Jerusalem was the gay parade, the gay pride parade. We're going to talk about family values, biblical family values, and talk about parades that are anti-biblical. And yet they have the freedom to be able to march. Now, I don't agree with this, and I don't even agree with their right to march. If what people do in their bedroom by themselves is not my business, but if you're bringing it onto public streets, then it becomes my business, and I'm against this. I think it breaks down society. I think it's the wrong values, and it's anti-Torah. And while the person may be a very nice person, certain things we keep off the public streets. I and all of us have our own monkeys on our backs, our own beliefs that we maybe want to push on other people. But that doesn't give us the right to be able to march down a public street and do it. It doesn't. If I believe in gluttony and I want to overeat and I want to have an obese parade, I don't think I should be able to have it, because obesity is deadly. It's very, very bad for society to have obese people. I fight this. I can talk about this because I fight. I have a food problem. I fight it every day. And though I may fail sometimes, I go off what I should be eating, etc., I always try to get back on it because I know this is a vice of mine. I know this is not the right and healthy way to be. I don't go and condone it and say, well, because I have a problem, so everybody else has to accept me as I am. Not if it's not healthy. No, I don't agree. You can call in and agree or disagree. But let's go to a caller right now. We have joining us. So he's going by the name One Angry Jew, and he's calling in from, I believe, the Philippines. Hi, can you give us your first name? Caller? Caller, do we have you on the line? Hello?
I can barely hear you.
Okay, I hear you fine, though, so go ahead.
I'm going to have to turn that volume way up. What did you ask me? What do you want? You wanted a first name?
Yes, just a first name.
Howard.
Howard. Okay, Howard. So what did you want to talk about?
So what's wrong with labels? I just heard you say we want to do away with the labels. But I'm an American Jew, but I'm not. I have very little in common with most American Jews. Most American Jews are on the left, and they're very liberal, bordering on Marxist. What do I have in common with them? I want to fight for my country. My country is America. I haven't made Aliyah yet. I plan to, but America is still my homeland. and it's still worth fighting for.
Okay. Do you have a question that you want to
win.
ask? Because I'll answer you, but do you have a question?
Yeah. Why should I? What makes me a brother with somebody who wants to destroy my own country? Just because they're Jews.
I see where you're going with this. Okay, I'm going to answer you. Thank you for your call. I'm going to hang up now just so you can hear me better off the line, okay?
I hear you fine.
You hear
I
me?
hear
Okay,
you fine.
so fine, Stan. So listen to me. First of all, the Jews that are in America that lean to the left, they do it out of goodwill, not out of trying to destroy society. They just don't have a Torah education. And you are all brothers. And for you to say that America is your country, America is a wonderful country. But right now it is being taken over where you have misfits in the streets who are making anarchy and stopping law and order from going on. People are not safe anymore. And if you're a Jew, you are going to be targeted. Now, you are outside of America. All right. And by the way, there are American Jews who are huge Trump supporters and are voting for Trump. So you've got two types. And usually the basic.
I am one of them.
Okay. And usually the definitive thing is if they've had a Torah education, they're going to be more conservative and they're going to vote for Trump. It's those that have been brought up secular and do not know what Torah says and they get the gist of Torah that we should be kind and loving to our people and help people, but they don't have the borders, the limitations, the knowing when and how to bring up the rest of mankind. And they're going with the left who are very strong and they're saying their version of how you do it. And unfortunately, it's wrong. Okay, so we lost our caller, unfortunately, but I hope he's listening offline. And I want to say that, many Jews, our caller is saying that America is his country because he hasn't moved yet to Israel. But I want to remind you, Howard, your family maybe came, before they went to America, they came from Russia. I don't know, I'm just giving an example. And they thought that they were Russians. They were Russians, and now your parents and you believe that you're Americans. And every Jew back during the time of the Inquisition, they thought that they were Spanish. But the Spanish government and the Inquisition turned on them and killed them. And the German Jews who thought they were German, they thought that, well, we're German. And we fought in World War I, and we even got medals for our patriotism. And their own country turned on them. So we have to remember, we are Jews living in Germany. We are Jews living in America. We are Jews living in Spain. We are Jews living in England. We are Jews living in France, wherever we are. But we are ultimately Jews in our land. Our country is Israel. That's where we need to be. That's the only place for Jews to be. And go in the summers to visit America. America's a lovely, wonderful country. We hope it stays that way. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
This is Shai Bentako, and each week I'll be webcasting to you from Judea, origin of the word Jew, a people besieged and beleaguered in every generation. Nazi Germany's but a memory, but in its place the world invented the phantom Palestinians as this generation's internationally authorized Jew killers. Tune in for a different slant on life in Israel, Phantom Nation, every Monday.
Hi, I'm Rabbi David Aaron. The soul basics are the most profound, the most essential, and yet often the most neglected in our education. Join me for Soul Talk on Israel's News Talk Radio and discover the secrets to love, spiritual growth, and personal power.
All right, we are back here at the Tamar Yonah Show on IsraelNewsTalkRadio.com. And I just read to you an article that was written by Rabbi Hanania Weissman. And he's joining us here on the show now. Let me just introduce him properly. And that is that he is the founder of endthemadness.org, and he's authored several books having to do with the Jewish world and biblical values. He's often published on thejewishpress.com. He has a blog on the Times of Israel, and he even makes videos, which you can find on YouTube or at his website at HananiahWeissman.com, and we will post a link to his website on our page where this show is podcasted. So welcome to the show, Rabbi Hananiah Weissman.
Thank you very much.
All right. So in the last 2 segments, I was reading your very, very powerful article trying to convince Jewish people in the United States and also around the world, because the whole world's economy is being hit. And whenever economies are hit, it's always the Jews' fault. We've seen that throughout history. And you've given some compelling reasons here why the Jews cannot rely anymore on law and order. Do you want to leave us with one last thought about this article before we go into?
Yes, I would say there's really two very short points. One of them is that God made a promise to the Jewish people that he's going to bring all of us back, and he is in the process of fulfilling that promise. He's already brought back approximately 7 million Jews, which is a large number, and the rest of them are very obstinate. And God is going to keep his promise. When he says he's going to do something, he does it, and the only thing standing in the way of him fulfilling his promise is the Jews being obstinate and not wanting to come back. So he's bringing them back whether they like it or not. It'd be much better if they came willingly, but if they're not going to come willingly, he has to kind of light the fire under them. And the other point I wanted to make is that there's really only a minor difference between the Jews who get it and the Jews who don't. The Jews in Israel have our masks over our nose and our mouth. The Jews in America and the rest of the Golas have the mask over their eyes. They just have to take it down over their eyes, and then they'll see what's going on all around them.
That's very funny, the way you put that. And so focusing here on what's happening in the land of Israel, today we have, on Sunday, the Gay Pride Parade hit Jerusalem. When I was there covering it some years ago, what was fascinating was they were marching because they want to make their mark and they have their agenda, but there was nobody there watching. The streets were completely empty. Jerusalemites were not welcoming this parade, and the only people that I did see there that were on the sidelines, not marching in the parade, but on the sidelines, were people who were there actually protesting this, because this is something that also Jew, also Muslim, also Christian, anybody who believes in the Bible does not want to see this happening, and especially in the holy city of Jerusalem, but anywhere. What do you want to say about that? Because I know that you have you've written articles on this as well about strong biblical family values.
Yes, well, I was one of those people protesting, and I have to tell you, unfortunately, we were viewed as the enemy. There was a very strong police force out there on horseback, guns drawn, and they viewed us as the enemy. A couple of years ago at one of these counter-protests, I started talking to one of these guards. I don't know if he was Jewish or Druze or Muslim. He wasn't wearing a yarmulke, and he had a very angry look on his face. He was looking at us with a very hostile look. And I said to him, boom, 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 just shoot us, and it's all over. I mean, you could just knock us out in one shot. And he smiled and he said, "Kol hakavod, that's a great idea." They really view us as the enemy, as bad people, and that's something that needs to change, because our people didn't spend thousands of years in Gullus, in exile, being persecuted, to come back to our land after all this time to then copy the ways of the nations of the world. We didn't need to go through all that to come back here and have gays marching in the street and men saying that they believe that they're women and all kinds of things like that. This doesn't really belong in the land of Israel, and this is not why we came back. And frankly, I don't know what they're so proud of. I mean, we as from Jews with strong family values have many things to be proud of. We are proud of our parents and grandparents and ancestors, and they, I believe, get nachas from us as well. We're proud of our children and grandchildren who come after us. We really have what to be proud of. The people in the gay world, I don't think their grandparents are shepping nachas from their lifestyle. And their grandchildren, if they even manage to have grandchildren somehow, if they manage to pay women to have babies for them and adopt them and raise them somehow, and then their children do the same thing, if they even have grandchildren, I don't think their grandchildren are going to look up to their ancestors and say, wow, our grandfather, our grandmother was really a wonderful paragon of light and truth, and we want to be like them. So I don't know what they have to be proud of. Are they proud that they say 1 + 1 is 3 instead of 2? That they're questioning God's nature? This is not progress, and it's not pride. And I don't say that with hatred. I say that with love, because I'm trying to bring these people back to their roots, to true Judaism.
All right, so there are people trying to struggle with the idea of living in a period and a time period where we're supposed to be enlightened, right? It's the year 2020,
Sure.
such great technology, and we value democracy, but at the same time, we have our own family values. And what would you tell them in order to be able to somehow balance this idea of freedom and democracy and yet what God wants?
Well, first of all, in terms of being advanced in science, that's one thing. In terms of being advanced in morals, we are not more advanced morally than people were thousands of years ago. The most moral Jews who ever lived were the Jews who stood at Har Sinai and said to God, we fully accept your Torah and we will keep all of your commandments. Those were the most moral Jews, and we are trying to go back to that as much as possible, to learn from them and copy them as much as possible. Morals are not getting more advanced as time goes on. They're getting less advanced as time goes on. Science is getting more advanced, but not morals. Second of all, there's nothing new under the sun. Shlomo HaMelech, King Solomon, said there's nothing new under the sun. It's not like in 2020 people woke up and realized, it would be a better world if men married men or men dressed up as women and identified as women and tried to compel people to call them women. That would be a much better world. This sort of nonsense has been going on in the past. Rav Zev Wolf Einhorn was a commentary on the Medrash Rabbah, and he writes in Bereshis Rabbah at the very end of the Parsha that the Dor HaMabul, the flood, it says there that what sealed their fate was gay marriage. What sealed the fate of those people that brought the flood in the times of Noah thousands of years ago was gay marriage. So Rav Zev Wolf Einhorn, who died in 1862, not modern times, he wrote that people who identify as gay have a Yetzer Hara. They have the desire to do evil, and they want to justify it. They want to be mafkir themselves, to be hefker, to just be allowed to do anything that they feel like doing. So they have to justify it, and therefore they get the judges to try to change the law to make living with animals or living with people of the same sex legal. So this is not a 2020 modern advancement. This is something that's been going on for thousands of years, and even the commentaries are writing about this in the 1800s.
All right. So basically, you're saying that out of love for our fellow human beings, that they may be embracing this lifestyle. They may be wanting to push it forward because they believe that they're being progressive. But if you look at the Torah and what God wrote, that the act, we're not talking about the people, we're talking about the act, is abominable, and it's not what is going to be healthy for society. I talked about, having an obesity parade, right? I mean, there are all sorts of things that we all struggle with every day. They don't think it's a struggle. They think it's something that they can embrace as a lifestyle, and that's what they think. But a lot of people do not agree with that. We go by biblical values, as you said.
Listen, it's very backwards. There was an article published in the Times of Israel last week. I call them the slimes of Israel because they're so extreme, radical leftists. It's just incredible. They had an article in which the authors of the article were extremely offended by the fact that somebody suffering from same-sex attraction, a man who wants to marry a woman and have children, he's struggling with this, and he really wants to be able to overcome it, can call a hotline and ask them, is it possible for me to overcome my same-sex attraction and marry a woman and have a successful marriage and have children? And the people on the other side of the hotline tell him, yes, it is possible. The authors of this article blasted such hotlines for giving these people hope that they can change. Again, these are people who are voluntarily wanting to change, calling for help, asking for help, being told, yes, it is possible to achieve your dreams. And the authors of this article in the Times of Israel were very, very horrified by this, that somebody struggling with gay tendencies can be told that there is hope for change if that's what they actually want. So I ask you, what is actually more cruel? Telling a gay person that you can change if you actually want to, or telling them, no, even if you want to change, you are doomed, you will never get married, you will never be able to have children, you have no hope at all. That is really horrible. And then imagine somebody who's struggling with their weight who calls a hotline and they're told, sorry, you have a fat gene, you will always be fat, it doesn't even pay to try, and you should just be proud of it. That would be a horribly cruel thing to say to these people, right? People want to change, and they're looking for hope and help in changing, and they're being told, no, sorry, there's no hope at all. That's actually very cruel.
Okay, I can imagine we may be getting a lot of letters about this because it's not popular what we're talking about. And whenever you talk about the Bible to a secular audience, it's always usually always not popular, but I'm holding in my hands right now the Jerusalem Post. This is from Friday, June 19th, and it says here, bill aims to outlaw gay conversion therapy. Cannabis legalization also set to come to a vote. So we're seeing what kind of world we're living in today with the progressives, that they want to legalize cannabis. At the same time, they want to have a bill that's going to outlaw anybody, like you just said, that wants to get counseling and how to be able to fight same-sex attractions that they may have. So, it's all over the world. But thank God in Israel we have the vast majority of people who are here because they believe that this is where God wants us to be. That we want to follow the Torah. There's never been more yeshivot of higher Torah learning as there is today, and we're telling all of our Jewish brothers and sisters to come and move home here to Israel. This is the best place to be. In 10 seconds, Rabbi Weissman, what do you want to leave us with?
I would tell all of these Jews that you just mentioned to speak up loudly and proudly for the values that they cherish, because if they don't, those rights and values are going to be taken away from them very, very quickly, as we've seen in other Western parts of the world.
Yes, and to the American people as well. If you're a Bible-believing person, you need to stand up for your values as well. Thank you so much for being with us, Rabbi Hanan.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, everyone else, for being with us.
Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. Just click the orange button at the top of the IsraelNewsTalkRadio.home page, log in as yourself or an anonymous guest, and join in on the fun. You'll meet other listeners from all over the world who listen to Israel News Talk Radio, and you can make new friends. Israel News Talk Radio's chat room. It's the closest you can get to being in the studio with us.
We love listening to Israel News Talk Radio.
Where can you get the inside news on Israel? At Israel News Talk Radio, we're dedicated to sharing Israel's inside story with the world by providing our listeners with news on Israeli politics, current affairs, and Israeli Jewish culture. The Israel News Talk Radio homepage also provides you, the listener, with useful information at your fingertips, with scrolling news headlines, weather, currency exchange, Shabbat candlelighting times, and so much more. Our radio programming is always accessible and on demand. We operate absolutely free of charge for everyone, everywhere. If you love what we do, partner with us now by becoming an Israel News Talk Radio supporter. With your support, you'll be inscribed on our Israel News Talk Radio Wall of Fame. There's nothing like us in the world. Be part of something great. Israel News Talk Radio. Straight talk from Israel.
If you love Israel News Talk Radio, then you'll love our Facebook page. We keep you up to date on what's happening in Israel, plus little surprise treasures that we don't share on the radio. Go now to follow us on Facebook. Just look for the Israel News Talk Radio Facebook page, and don't forget to subscribe and follow us by clicking on the like button. We post great stuff there that you'll want to share. Israel News Talk Radio on Facebook and Israel News Radio on Twitter.
News, opinion, and more. You're listening to Israel News Talk Radio.